Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Friday with Fran. I am one host, Shelly Kino, and this is my friend Fran, who is also with me hosting today. We're just two people who have been around the world of special education for a very long time. She, as a parent, and herself, someone who has become someone with a disability a few years ago, and me, who is a veteran special educator with more years than I want to say, um, in that role. And so we just gather every day, I mean, every Friday to chat. So how's it
Yeah,
going, Fran?
it's going okay. I'm
It's going
having a bad
okay.
I'm having a bad tummy day, but
Uh oh,
it's
that's not good. Hey, Alex, how are you? So, Fran reminded me, thankfully, this is why we have two people do this show, that we had said last week that we were going to talk about IEPs today and kind of what's all involved in one and why they're necessary and how to prepare and all that kind of stuff. Um, and so, Fran has more experience from the parent side, and obviously my experience is from the educator side. However, I am gaining experience from the parent side, being an educational
right.
surrogate parent. So I'm going to have to start following all the advice that I've given over all the years.
And also you have the experience as an IEP coach as well. So
Yes,
you bring a multi-dimensional approach to this now.
I do. Yes, that is true. That is very true. So let's just jump right in. So what kinds of things do you do to prepare?
I have
Binders.
I have a binder and it doesn't look that thick till I turn it sideways.
Yeah, and you have lots of good information in there. And so, what kind of things do you keep in there?
Um, Old IEPs and medical information, all correspondence,
Hmm.
all correspondence. I print it so that I have it to reference because I've found it comes in handy. Any psychological reports, any testing that I have copies of. Mm, and that's about it.
And I noticed as you were flipping through that you have sort of tabs so that you don't have to flip through everything to get to, say, the correspondence. You have a tab that you can just go, okay, all the correspondence is here. So you can just flip right to that one section.
Yes.
And I recommend that because when you're in a meeting, your emotions tend to be high, even if it's a positive meeting.
Hmm.
It's just like, oh, okay, I gotta, anytime you try to find something in a meeting, I think there's tenseness going on. So it's nice to have it as organized as possible. And I actually have a kit that, if anyone is watching, oh, there's a glare on it pretty bad.
I
It's
can
my
see it.
IEP binder.
Hmm.
And I have, very similar to what Fran was talking about, I have um, a who to contact section. So the reason I include that is because you don't always need to contact the same person. And in fact, for many things, you shouldn't be contacting the same people. So that sheet helps. Who do I contact if it's an attendance issue? Who do I contact if it's a transportation issue? Who do I contact if it's getting the homework? Who do I contact if it's that something isn't being followed in the IEP or I don't understand something? And usually roles are played out by different people, so you'll need to contact different people. A lot of the who do I contact examples may end up, depending on the size of your school, being the same person, but in a lot of cases it's not. And so you don't always want to be calling one person and then being redirected somewhere else. So if you have health issues, if you have discipline issues, if you have teacher related issues or after school programs, those are some of the other areas that I have in who to contact. And it is also good to discuss this at the meeting, um, just to make sure that everybody's aware of what their role is supposed to be. Because um, somebody might say, oh, you're supposed to contact this person for transportation. And then that person's like, I don't know anything about transportation. So, you know,
Right.
when you have a group discussion, you can really find out who it is that you need to speak to about those kinds of different things. And then you might also, I have a master provider list of like who is, and this is also in the who to contact section. Like who do I need to talk to if I have a medical question or an educational question or a psychological eval question. And then you'll know, and then it also has in here like what the service is that that person provides as far as, in my idea, when I fill this out is like, if your child gets OT, okay, who is the OT? Is that the person actually administering the OT service, or is there someone else that's going to administer it? And then how many minutes? Is it 20 minutes, 30 minutes a week? Is it 80 minutes a month? You know, whatever it says in the IEP, just so that helps you kind of keep everything organized for each of the different kiddos that you have in your world. And like me, I now have 10. So it's a lot to keep track of who's doing what, where, when, and how.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have to put 10 binders together.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
I see that.
And so then, yeah, the next section that I would have, and I think you mentioned this, any evaluations, old IEPs. Now, how many IEPs do you keep in your binder?
I keep about this many.
Okay.
Because
go ahead.
Because unless they've stayed pretty much the same, but it's kind of, my kids were kind of fluid, so I wanted to be able to reference, well, we've tried this and here's what we did as a goal and it didn't work, so let's not do this again.
Right.
What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I think too, at least 2 or 3 plus the current one, for very similar reasons, because then you can say, well, we did try this here and it wasn't successful. So if we're going to try it again, maybe we need to try the approach differently. Or, you know, like you said, well, we've already tried it and it didn't work. And I don't really want to take the time for my student to work on that skill anymore. So let's just move on, you know, something just so again, so that you have, because as the parent, you're the only constant in all the IEP meetings. You go to every one from the first one to the last one, most likely. And your child will come along with you at some point, but they're typically not there from the beginning to the end. So you as the parent having that kind of knowledge is very, very important. And yeah, when you can carry it with you and say, well, remember, here we go on IEP dated whatever, this is what we talked about then. Or like the next section I'm jumping into is the communication. Why do you have all of the communication? You made an emphasis on putting all of the communication in there.
Because you don't know what you're going to need a reference.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to have it printed out and in your binder than to be scrolling through your phone in the middle of the meeting looking for that obscure email conversation that you had that you're needing to back a point.
Right. And what I suggest doing on the top of any communication that you have is to like list out the key points in that one, because sometimes our communication, we start off with one topic and then we end up on a different topic. So making sure that, you know, you're not having to read every single email completely while you're at the meeting, but like, oh, okay, this one was about the attendance issue, or, oh, this one was about the incident in the classroom, or, oh, this one was about, you know, so that you kind of, again, sort of categorize it out. And I know that this is all a lot of work, but It is worth it.
And sticky notes are my best friend
Yeah.
because I use those to put onto those communications. So it jumps at me and I can see it. And also, a lot of times going into an IEP, especially as my kids got older, I knew the points that I was wanting to cover and what I needed to back those points. So I would make sure I had those communications marked so
Yeah.
that.
Sorry.
All right.
Oh.
Apparently Cooper, I don't know.
Cooper
Why
wanted
he's
to
barking.
say God bless me, even though it wasn't a sneeze.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom.
Oh, hi, Mom.
I just saw her too. Yeah, that, I mean, being able to pull that stuff quickly and not have to, and I think sometimes the pressure that I mentioned before about trying to find something quickly is our own pressure because we know people are waiting for us. But oftentimes the people that are waiting for us are not like, oh my gosh, I wish you would hurry up and find this. You know, it's just like, okay, we're waiting, you know, and it's not a big deal to them, but we think, or at least that's how I am. And maybe that's just my anxiety, but you know, I'm quickly trying to find something, and
Because
I
you
would
feel
think,
like all eyes are on you.
yeah, yeah. And I like the sticky note idea because you could almost make those tabs, you know,
Yeah.
and
Can you see my stickies?
yeah, and
I
possibly, go ahead.
keep them in my binder so that I have them.
Yeah.
I don't know why the dog's barking.
So do your sticky notes say like, um, this email is about behavior and this email is about attendance? And so you have like every time there's a behavior talked about in a conversation, you stick a tab on that that's our sticky that says behavior? Or how do you use your tabs?
My stickies or my tabs?
Your stickies, I'm sorry.
I am so sorry about my dog. I have no idea
It's
why
okay.
he's barking. The stickies, I only put them on emails that I was really wanting that to bring that point out, that conversation.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I would have stickies on everything, and then that really wouldn't help me.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's why I was asking. Alex says for her involvement in IEPs, having things in writing is so important, so things can be stated as facts and not miscued.
That's really good.
Yeah, we definitely want to deal in facts and remove as much emotion as possible. I mean, you can't remove all the emotion. It's an emotional topic that, you know, when you're talking about your child and their needs. But if you can say, well, it wasn't just that I think someone said this. Here's the email where myself and whomever were talking about this, or you know, here is the IEP where it says this, or better still, here's the data that shows this is needed or not needed because of whatever the data shows. So yeah.
Right.
So you didn't say this, but
Yeah,
this one
Alex
is
agrees with
something that I have in my binder kit is having sample work of the child.
Okay.
Just because it helps, you know, like, okay, well, this is where they were. And now we're having our next annual review. Are they beyond this now? Or here, this is what they've just done recently. So, you know, that's a nice example of their
That's
work,
good.
Their work progress. And then progress reports. Tell me about progress reports. Do you keep progress reports in yours?
Those are really interesting things because a lot of times I didn't get the progress reports till like way down the road. Yeah, no comment. So progress reports.
Progress reports, what?
Were not very beneficial for us. So
Okay.
I saw no need to keep them because they were outdated by the time I got them.
Oh, okay. We might go down that rabbit hole, but I'm just trying really hard not to go there right now.
So, but do you keep progress reports?
Absolutely.
And why? And why?
Because it's multiple reasons. So, because I want to see if my child is really progressing from one time of a progress report to the next one. I want to know if there has been any regression, or if my child is just sort of on the brink of getting having like a breakthrough in their education. And a lot of schools use IEP progress reports or IEP progress as the criteria for determining if those two things are happening, and therefore whether or not a child may need to get extended school year services. So also, and how I teach teachers to write their progress reports is very specific. I instruct them that they take the actual goal or the actual objective and they rewrite it. Well, they don't actually rewrite it. They copy and paste it into the progress report, and then they change the criteria. So like if it's to 80% and the student is doing something to 65%. So for example, Shelley will, and this is a very poor example, Shelley will attend class 7 out of 10 times in a row. And so the progress report should say Shelley is on average attending class 5 out of 10 times in a row. Because then that gives the exact information. And there's no question, there's no emotion. If you get a progress report that says sufficient progress or not sufficient progress or limited progress or expected to make, expected to master goal by IEP's end date or next meeting or whatever, that doesn't tell you anything. That gives you the opinion of the person writing that progress. Because what sufficient means to me may not be sufficient for you, the parent. What anticipated meeting the goal? Well, I don't know. I mean, are they just barely gonna meet it by the skin of their teeth, or are they gonna blow right past it? It leaves a lot of room for interpretation. And that's not how IEPs are supposed to be. They're supposed to be very specific, factual, data-driven pieces of legal documentation. So that's why I suggest keeping the progress reports. And I'm surprised that you got them so far beyond, because that's supposed to be followed, decided with the team how often you're going to get those progress reports. So if you're going to get progress on goals once a month, then they're going to write progress reports. If you're going to do it as the quarters end, if you're going to do it weekly, whatever it is, you are supposed to be getting those at that timetable. And I'm sorry that was not happening or did not happen, because that's not right. But it's something that I'm working on and I'm trying to change. I do teach teachers, but I don't know that they always take what I say and change their ways if they were not doing it that way in the past.
It's all good. I understand. So you have progress reports. What's your next?
The next thing I have is report cards, which I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big believer in grades, and grades meaning what people think they mean is why I'm not a big believer in grades. But I think it's just another bit of information to have at your fingertips if you would need to refer back to something. And I wouldn't keep more than the previous year for that section. And then I have any behavior notes that are received. If you get copies and you care about having the standardized test scores, that's another thing that I'm like, okay, it's a bit of information. It gives more of a picture, but any standardized test score is not the whole picture of the child. So making sure that if you have that in there, it's just there for reference. Like, hey, last year when they took this standardized test, met expectations. Now this year they're below expectations. So like maybe trying to figure out why that is. Was the child just having off days the day that they were tested? Is it that the child's learning has decreased for some reason? And so it's just another bit of information. And then something that I have in here, but I did it based on a recommendation, and I don't really push this one or really talk about it, is there's a lot of people who have school fees and lunch fees. I wanted to try to put another word there. Or school fees or field trip forms or field trip fees. And so that was something that was suggested by someone else to have in their binder, that they keep copies of all of those things in the binder, because then if it does, which it shouldn't come up at an IEP meeting because it's not what you're there to discuss, but if it was to ever pop up, then you could say, oh yeah, I sent the check, I mailed it, or I sent it in with my kid, or I dropped it off on such and such a day. And so it's, another bit of information to have in there, but like I said, it's not one that I put much emphasis on.
That's kind of funny because we had a hard time getting things to make it to school if I sent them in with one of my kiddos.
Mm-hmm.
And so it became known that that's not how we would get communication back and forth. Well, one of those things was yearbook fees.
Mm.
And they were found in the textbook. They never got turned in.
Aww.
So it just reminded me. I'm like, yeah, that was one of those, we sent it in hoping it would make it because we thought it was something this child would want. And
yeah. So by the time it was found, was it too late to use it?
Yeah, it was the end of the school year when they were turning the textbook in.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a check that had never cleared, and I'm sitting there going, what's going on?
Oh, that's a bummer.
So
yeah.
So that just reminded me of it. So yeah.
So that at least would have been like, hey, I know I wrote the check because, but I mean, there's a lot of, you could do duplicate checks too. But I don't know that you would want your duplicate check in a binder that you take to the school. But so that's the kind of thing that I have in the binder kit that I offer for free. If anyone wants it, just reach out to me. It also I have some sample.
So how can they reach out to you to do that? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
My email, which is, hang on, wrong one. That's not it. That's the website. What? Oh, I thought I had my email in here. That's the website.
Oh, it's scrolling too.
And it's scrolling. Let me write it down.
Oh, there it is. I see it. Your emails, but it's underneath something else.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Let's do it this way. So, yeah, you can email me if you would like a copy of my free IEP binder kit, and just title the subject line IEP binder kit, and I will send you. And it also includes, which I didn't say, but it does have forms at the beginning that give you some general information of sample ideas of things to collect, and then gives you an article about why it's important to have these things. And which, like I said, I didn't really bring that up to start with, but that's included in the binder kit. And yeah, so it took me a minute to find this today, I'll be honest, because I haven't had it out in a while, because I'm still trying to get myself organized for my surrogate students. So this is what you'll get if you actually, when I send you the kit. You don't get the binder, you just get the little packet. So you'll have to go out and purchase your own binder. But the kit itself is free, and all the directions and why. So why is it important? So we kind of talked about this, but what's the purpose of an IEP? Do you know?
What's the purpose of an IEP?
Yeah.
It's an individualized education program. It's to
Uh-huh.
make it's to provide all the tools necessary for a child to succeed.
Okay. Yes.
How does
Now,
that sound?
do you want the technical definition?
Sure. Let me put my phone on vibrate. I'm so sorry. It's a
That's
loud
okay.
day at my house, apparently.
Oh, well, that's all right. So yeah, the official, and I probably won't get it verbatim, but from the federal law is to provide special education and related services to meet the unique needs to prepare a child for further education, employment, and independent living. So that's what you said, but I just delineated it out a little bit more.
You put it in the real words. Yeah, I
Well,
like it.
and they're not my words. They're whoever wrote the law. So, but yeah, so that's, we need to think about that when, whether we're the parent or the school, when part of the IEP team, and we're all a part of the IEP team. So if you're a parent and you don't feel that you are a part of the IEP team, or if you're a related service person or a teacher and you don't feel like you're a part of the IEP team, every one of us is an equal and important member of the team. So we all need to be participating and giving our input and hearing and listening to what everyone else is saying.
And
But
so, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
but remembering that even if we're writing an IEP for a kindergartner, a fifth grader, or somebody in high school, it's always to be thinking of, we're preparing them for further education, employment, and independent living. So it's not just what happens during the school day.
Right. And what I was going to tag on to that is way back when my son was in early childhood and we were working on some of his goals. Well, I didn't even realize I had a say in what some of his goals were.
Mhm.
And it took me a little while to figure that one out. And then when um, there was a certain goal I wanted, and they said, well, that's not necessary. That's something that needs to be worked on at home. That's not for school. And I said, no, this is a goal that will help him in his future and to further his independent living. And I believe that's covered under what you're supposed to be doing. And so that goal did get included at that point.
Yeah. And it's interesting, reminding sometimes of what the school's responsibility is. I was having a conversation with a family member some time ago, and they were saying, well, this is not someone who's in education or in the special education world, but they said, there's a time where you have to, where the parent has to take some responsibility for certain things. And I said, it's a good point, but that's not what the law says. There is no law that says a parent is responsible for whatever, but there are laws that say what the school is responsible to do, and we have to follow those laws.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sometimes, it's an opinion of, well, I think that's what the parent should be doing. Well, I'm sorry that that's what you think, but that's not the law. So yes, you did exactly right by saying, well, no, I'm pretty sure this is under that law. And we're not lawyers. I'm not a lawyer as an educational coach. I'm not a lawyer. But I can read the law, and I know the law, and I understand the law. So having those kind and gentle reminders, which is not always easy to have.
But as a parent of children with unique needs, you're always having to advocate. So it just is second nature just to do it.
Right. Yeah. And I find myself, I was having this conversation with someone that I work with earlier today, that I've always been for the person or the entity that I feel is being treated unfairly. And some days, and I find myself doing it still in what I'm doing. Like some days I feel like the parents are being treated unfairly. Some days I see that teachers are getting thrown under the bus unfairly. So some days in my social media stuff, I'm like, hey, be kind to teachers. And then other days I'm like, hey, be kind to parents,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean, that's always been my thing, is like, especially, we have to remember that we're all here for a purpose, and we have to be kind to one another. And what's the saying? You get more flies with honey than vinegar, but I don't understand why you want flies at all. So I've never quite understood that saying. I mean, I get it, but
maybe the honey kills them, they get trapped in it, so that's how you're attracting it. I don't know, but you know what, I think the important thing even is, in the midst of it, whether you're seeing the parent as the underdog in that meeting or the teacher, is ultimately remembering what our purpose is, what our common goal is the student. And when we can all keep that at the forefront, then our own pettiness, our own pride can be set aside, because then we can be focusing on the important.
Right. Yep.
And even if that means getting kicked under the table by your support person when your pride is getting in the way, you just.
Yeah. Question. Is the IEP to cure someone of their disability?
No.
No. Well, you know that, and I know that, but just in case somebody watching didn't know that, the IEP is to give equal access to education. I don't even know if it's equal access. To give access to education in whatever way the person needs that access. Which, can I veer off topic?
I guess so.
Okay. Well, because I'm excited to share something.
Okay.
So tonight, Kevin and I are going to the Spirit of Discovery Park Gala. And for anyone who doesn't know what the Spirit of Discovery Park is, it ties in with what we're talking about today. It goes with the accessibility. It's a park, a theme park for every body. Right, exactly. We never veer off course, Mom. She says, what? You never do that. And so it's this access that is so important to have at a place. Because I don't know, have you gone to like any theme parks since you've had to use a wheelchair and a walker to get around more?
No, because it's too hard.
Why is it too hard? What do you mean?
It's a fight just to get through the people. It's a fight to the distance from site to site. It's just too draining. I haven't even been to a Cardinals game.
Yeah. So with this theme park, I mean, it is going to be spread out because it is going to have rides and things, but there are going to be, like, if I'm thinking about someone in a wheelchair and they want to ride on the ride, say a roller coaster or any kind of a ride, even like the choo-choo trains that take you around these different parks. If you're in a wheelchair, you either have to try to get out of your wheelchair and get onto the train or get into the roller coaster seat. Or if you can't get out of the wheelchair, you need it for support, then you have to sit at the back of the train or the ride, and your loved ones may be at a different location. And so it's that inclusiveness too of, well, part of the reason I came to the park and wanted to ride this ride is to be with my friend or my family. And if I'm not sitting by my friend or my family, then I'm not enjoying it with them. So this theme park, Spirit of Discovery Park, is it has that all in mind. How can my loved one, no matter what their level of ability um, is is going to be hopefully in the St. Louis area in the next few years, and just having that access to all the different rides, all the different attractions, having things for people who are visually impaired, having things for people who have different food allergies, having things for people who need a sensory break for a little while, but they don't want to completely leave the park. Um, I mean, the person who is the founder of the park and who is the spearhead of it is constantly amazing me by everything that she thinks about. The
Well,
surface that, everyone will be walking on, or being mobile on, what kind of surface that is, having things raised up or lowered depending on, what it is, so that everyone, no matter what level they're at as far as height and ability to be tall, or have to be in a chair or whatever, that all that stuff is accessible by everyone. And that's, again, that's one of the main ideas behind special education, is that we are providing education that is accessible, and that it accommodations and modifications help students access
mhm.
their education.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm excited to go.
that's cool.
I'm going to get all dressed up, and
Yay.
yeah.
You'll have to update us when we have Friday with Fran again.
Yeah, I'm sure Jamie usually has like a picture booth, or a, place where you can have a picture. And the funny thing is, though, that Kevin and I are going together, but we're not sitting together. So
Really?
yeah, a friend of mine, I found out, I don't remember exactly when, but after Kevin and I had already been invited to sit at a particular table with some people, that my friend was coming into town. And so I'm like, well, I want my friend to come, but there wasn't room on the other table. So Kevin and he's going to sit at that original table, and I'm going to go sit with my friend who's coming into town and coming, tonight. And they're like not even close together where the tables are, but it's not a huge venue. So, I mean, you know, we'll still be in the same place, and we'll go together and we'll come home together. My worry is that we're going to bid on the same item and not know that the other one is bidding on that item.
Uh-huh. That's when you need to text each other.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, because that's how we bid, is it's all done by phone. She has it where and it'll alert you if somebody's overbid you.
Oh,
So,
cool.
but it doesn't tell you who overbid you. So yeah, be like, hey, are you bidding on item number, whatever? So
Mhm.
yeah, so I'm excited about that. That's kind of where my brain is. If I seem like I'm not totally with it
Okay.
right now, that's kind of where my brain is. It's like, I'm excited to go and have fun, and there's going to be some live entertainment. There's going to be some dancing that is provided by a young lady who has Down syndrome, and there's going to be I know there's other live entertainment, but that's the only one that I've been told about. I don't know what the other live entertainment is. And yeah, so it should be good.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
it's all about accessibility. It's all about feeling that you're part.
Which reminds me, as you were talking about height level, I remember my most recent trip to the zoo. Do you know all the railings are exactly at eye level? So you can't see into the enclosures.
Oh, that's not good.
Because, I mean, you always see parents holding the little kids up so that
Right.
they can see. But I was constantly doing,
Oh,
or looking under between railings to try to see.
right. Nope, I did not know that. I'll say something to Jamie for Spirit of Discovery Park, but I would almost guarantee that she's already thought about that, because it's, like I said, it's just incredible how she's thought about things. And I don't know if there'll be anything for viewing necessarily, but yeah, just
Hmm.
as another thing for her to to consider, and like having bathrooms and that are accessible to everyone, and having bathrooms that have changing tables that are big enough for adults. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, she's just, like I said, she's thought it all. And this will, when it opens, it will be only the second one in the world like it.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited for this to become a reality. She's been on this for 6 years, I think now. So this many years.
Okay.
All the calendars. So yeah, it's had lots of ups and downs, but she keeps plugging away. And one day her dream will be a reality, and it will be awesome. And I'll get to say I was at it from the beginning.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. I just thought of something. Sorry, yes. Chipmunking back to IEPs.
Right.
What is the one thing that you taught me recently, prior to my daughter aging out, that I did at the start of the IEP?
The parent input statement?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what one thing I taught you. Yeah, so the parent input statement on every IEP, and it might be worded a little bit differently than how I'm going to say it, is a section for parent concerns or parent input, or it'll say something about parent. And it's usually in the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance section of the IEP, but it's in there somewhere. And what I have taught Fran to do, and what I teach other people to do, is to write a statement. And when I say a statement, it's usually not just a sentence or two. It's a couple of paragraphs that tell what your wishes and desires are. And if your child is able to share with you what their wishes and desires are and what they want to see in their own future, you write those things in there, and you send that ahead of time, if at all possible, so that the person who is putting all the documentation together for the IEP can just copy and paste what you have written into the IEP. And if you have big concerns, is that your most recent one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's like a page, and that's a good amount. I would never try to go over that. If you feel like you have so much to talk about that it would need to be longer, especially typed out, than a page, then you might need to have somebody help you really hone in on like the top 3 things that are your biggest concerns. Because no IEP is ever going to be perfect. No IEP is probably going to contain every single thing that your child needs to be focusing on, or that the school needs to be focusing on with your child. So honing that down into like communication, community stuff, behavior stuff, basically like those 3 areas that are the purpose of the IEP: the independent living, the further education, and the employment. If you can kind of come up with like, this is what I anticipate my child doing in the future, and so in order to get to that point, we need to be working on this, this, and this. And then, in order for my child to get to, like I said, those 3 main points. So that's been, I think, very helpful.
Yeah, and I really felt it was helpful. And the reason mine was lengthy this time was this was my daughter's final IEP, and the final IEP follows her into her services in adulthood. And right. There were certain things I felt were needed to be in that IEP, and I wanted to make sure that it didn't get removed or that it needed to be added. And I explained the reasoning behind it so that there wasn't a question about it.
And another good thing that the parent input statement does is it helps the school's part of the IEP team understand better about where you're coming from as the parent. And it takes the emotion out. You get to have your say with, I mean, it's not that that's the only thing that you were going to say at the meeting, but it's at a less emotional time when it's being written and when it's being read by the school's part of the team, if that makes sense. So yeah, exactly, Alex. If I can say in one word, the most important thing in an IEP is to have open communication between all involved. Yeah, and as Fran said before, it's not about the adults sitting around the table. It's about the student for whom the IEP is being written, and remembering that this is their future that you're talking about, and not to limit them and their potential, but to be reasonable. And hopefully, if you can, like I said, in that parent input statement, if you can have an opportunity to talk with your child about, hey, what do you think you want to be when you grow up, or where do you think you're going to live, or that sort of thing, then that's even better to include that in that section, in that letter. And always making sure that you understand. If there's something that you don't understand that they are talking about. I was talking to someone this morning, and she threw out some letters, and she expected me to know what they were, because in her world of special education, those are letters that she uses to describe something. And she was like, yeah, I do this. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And then when she told me what the letter stood for, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's like, we call that this here. So, we do that in every occupation. Every profession has their own acronym.
Alphabet soup.
Yeah. And education is certainly no different in that regard. And so, yeah, just, if you don't understand what the letters mean, if they've explained something to you and it didn't make sense to you, or for some reason it just didn't register what they said, ask them to repeat it. And if it's still, after repeating it once, still doesn't make sense, ask them again. I know it's uncomfortable. And if you don't want to do it in person, if you've asked them twice and you still don't get it, say, okay, I still don't understand, but, maybe I can have a conversation with whoever said the thing that you didn't understand when the meeting is over. And actually, oftentimes when that sort of statement is said, the person's like, oh, I just really want to help this person understand it. And they'll try again anyway. Not always, but, if it's something that's not necessary to understand in order to move forward with the IEP, then that's my suggestion. If it's something you really need to understand in order to go forward in the IEP, I would ask, like, well, can someone else explain it? Because maybe someone else will explain it differently in a way that resonates with you that the first person's didn't.
Right. And something else I want to emphasize from my experiences, I'm not sure if this is has occurred with other people, but making sure you have a copy of the IEP, an actual physical copy, before you leave, not waiting for it to be sent home. Because I actually like to look at what they put in there before I leave. So, because sometimes there's so much communication going on, it might not have gotten added just because it wasn't heard, not because they didn't want to add it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not blaming them because they left it out, but there were so many people talking that it just didn't get added. And I've had that happen. And one time the copier wasn't working, and then it got sent home, but I looked and it wasn't added. So then it took us having to meet via, to legally do it, I don't remember how we had to do it, but to get it added.
Yeah. Mom has to leave.
Oh.
And she won't be with us next week because her sister's coming into town. So she's going to be visiting and having fun with her sister. So.
Okay. Well, enjoy your time. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. And something that you were talking, regarding that. Also, getting a draft copy of the IEP at least 3 school days ahead of when the IEP the meeting is going to happen, so that you as the parent have a chance to look over everything that's being proposed. Nothing is set. It's a draft. It's you'll do the final at the meeting. But But at least that way, you're not being bombarded with all the information as if it's all brand new to you. And you'll have time as a parent to look it over and digest it and formulate any questions you might have. Love you too, Mom.
Love to you as well.
Um, and have, it's not a way to I gotcha, it's just a way to help the meeting run as smoothly as possible. And, maybe you can communicate beforehand, like, hey, I don't quite understand this. What does this mean? Or no, I don't want my child to work on this goal. What else could we possibly work on? And then you don't have to have those discussions with the full team. I mean, you can have that discussion like, hey, this is what Mom and I talked about, or Dad and I talked about. And so this was what was there, but now we think we're going to go with this one. How does the rest of the team feel about that? And then, the parent has their opportunity to, again, speak without having the stress so much and so much high emotion. Communication to me involves so much, not just the facts, but asking questions, requesting things, just making sure all is understood so the best outcome can be had, says Alex. Yeah. And that's very true.
Really good. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that's something also that in a lot of states, they require that now, that draft IEPs get sent out prior to meetings. But if you're in a state that doesn't happen, you can still request it. And if you request it, then the law says they need to give it to you, as well as you need to request the data that they used to determine anything that you're going to be discussing from that draft IEP.
Yeah, that data is kind of hard to get sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And can I tell you, I'm going to tell on myself if you let me tell this funny story.
Okay.
Okay. So I've been going through a lot of my old teaching stuff and deciding, okay, I'm not going back into the classroom most likely. So what am I going to keep? Why am I going to keep it? And then getting rid of everything else. And so been trying to, there's tons and tons and tons and tons of pieces of paper. And so I've been going through each piece of paper because I've been throwing them in the recycling bin unless they have identifiable information on them of either myself or some former students. And so I've come across a few pages where I was evaluated either formally or just on a little sheet of paper. And it says, and these were like from my very early years, you need to keep data. You need to have better data. You need to have more data. And I cracked up because I thought, oh my gosh, I was not a big data keeper in the beginning because it seemed like it was so much work. And I know that that's the reason that a lot of teachers don't like to keep data, because it just seems like it's an extra thing to do as frequently as is required by many IEPs. But once I started doing that, then as I was looking through some of those evaluation notes, it was like really good data, excellent data, and I could tell too. I remember in my teaching that writing my annual review IEPs started becoming easier. Writing those progress reports started becoming easier because I had all the data to look at. So yes, it takes time, but it's either time taking the data or time spent trying to develop a proper IEP and progress report. But I thought that was hilarious that here's me constantly saying, take data. And I wasn't always that way. Change is good most of the time.
Change happens.
What's all in our IEP toolbox? And I'm really bad at making graphics for our episodes. I don't think I put up a graphic. I know I didn't put up a graphic for the last time we talked about what's in the toolbox. It's still in my stack of notes on my very messy desk.
It's okay.
So what's the rundown? What's in the toolbox?
Toolbox. I don't know.
You're not feeling good, are you?
Sorry.
That's okay.
The binder with a list of stuff, and it varies depending on what you need, but you can get that, what you can put in the binder from Shelly. You can just send her an email. And the parent input statement, I think, is really important. And also remembering that the student is the focus.
Yeah. And something we didn't say that I meant to say, don't surprise the rest of the team with anything the day of the meeting. So whether you're the school, don't surprise the family member with, oh, by the way, we want to change this placement and it's completely different than anything that we've ever discussed before. Or
I did that, by the way.
Or if you're the parent, don't come in and say, by the way, I'm going to file due process against you because I don't know. I mean, I don't think that would happen, but
Can I tell you what I did?
Of course.
I told him my son was coming in with a service dog the following year.
Oh.
And they kind of went, but it didn't happen. So.
Oh.
But I dropped it at the IEP meeting.
Well, and that, I mean, it wasn't like, hey, this is happening right now. I mean, it was kind of a heads up. It was just at the meeting, not in a prior, written thing. But
so it probably wasn't the best thing to do. But
yeah, well, we all learn, right?
Yes.
We do things and we learn from them, and then we take what we know and we move on and we get better. And it helps to have people surrounding us that can support us and teach us what we don't know and help us not to feel alone.
Yeah, because you're never alone.
Yep, exactly.
Because you know what this calendar is, right?
Yes.
What is
I do. Suicide prevention or suicide awareness month. Yeah, my mental health awareness walk is at the end of this month. It actually fell in September this year instead of October.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm going to try to come.
Thank you. There'll be a Friday where I probably won't be available. I did it last year, and then you had to call me in the middle and like, hey, hello, are you still? I'm like, oh, yeah. So probably just ought to plan not to do it on September 30th.
Well, we actually can't because I have a medical procedure that day.
Oh, well, okay. Then you're probably not going to make it to the walk if you have the procedure during the day because the walk is in the evening.
I know, but I have high ambitions.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that after the show. All right. So I think we're definitely not going to be here September 30th. So just so you know, so we'll be here next week, which is September 23rd, and then not the following week. And we'll play it by ear after that. But
thanks, Alex.
So thanks. Yeah. We appreciate that, Alex. Good review, ladies. Thanks again. We're so appreciative that you join and Mom joins and anyone else who was joining that may or may not have written. It's time for me to stop. I can't speak. It's actually time. Anyway, now that I just looked up at the clock, it's actually time. So remember, you're not alone. Remember that Fran and I are here. Reach out to us through here. Just make sure that you let us know, that you're not some spammer or scammer, that you actually reached out because we told you to in the episode. And we'll help you if we can and be there for you, and stay well, be well, and keep changing the world one person at a time.
Yep.
See ya.